Something unusual happened just days ago. Nearly 800 of America's top military leaders were abruptly summoned to a single location. Generals, admirals, their most senior enlisted advisors from every corner of the globe were ordered to Quantico, Virginia, with very little warning. This kind of gathering is rare. While senior commanders meet regularly throughout the year, a meeting of this magnitude, called on such short notice and with such a mysterious purpose, is almost unheard of. It immediately signaled that something significant was about to unfold, raising questions and concerns long before the first speaker took the stage. The sheer logistics and cost of pulling so many key figures from their posts at once suggested a message of immense importance was to be delivered. The scene was set for a major announcement. The audience was not a political rally crowd. It was the uniformed leadership of the United States Armed Forces. These are the men and women tasked with leading troops, planning strategy, maintaining the nonpartisan integrity of the military. Their presence, mandated by the highest levels of government, created an atmosphere of tense anticipation. The world watched, waiting to understand why this extraordinary assembly was necessary. The lack of a clear, pre-stated agenda only fueled speculation, with many wondering if it related to a new global threat, a major strategic shift, something else entirely. President Trump's address to the military leaders was pointed and unapologetic. He framed his vision as a return to strength, arguing that the military had become too concerned with social sensitivities. He declared an end to what he described as overly sensitive, do not hurt anyone's feelings leadership. This was a direct challenge to the existing culture within the Pentagon, which has, for years, worked to promote diversity, inclusion, and a professional environment free from harassment. The message was that toughness and combat readiness should be the only priorities, even at the expense of other values. The rhetoric matched his long-standing criticism of political correctness, but applying it to the top brass was a significant escalation. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth echoed the president, offering a more direct, actionable framework. He announced that the era of woke in the military was officially over. Policies related to diversity, equity, and inclusion would be re-evaluated or reversed. A longtime critic of these initiatives, Hegseth's appointment was seen as a mandate to enact this agenda. At Quantico, he moved to act immediately, using his authority to issue new directives. Nearly 800 leaders were tasked with implementing a course correction. It was not a debate. It was an ultimatum. Following the president's speech, Hegseth laid out sweeping changes. The most prominent was an overhaul of physical fitness standards. All service members, regardless of gender or military occupation, would be held to a single, higher standard, the male level for combat positions. This ends gender-neutral tests and tiered fitness tests that accounted for physiological differences and varied job requirements. Hegseth also targeted grooming standards and discipline. He declared, "No more beardos," signaling a crackdown. He announced an end to restrictions on hazing for boot camp recruits, reversing decades of policy meant to prevent abuse and injury. He said racial quotas used to ensure diversity in leadership and specialized roles would be eliminated. He argued these changes restore disciplined, professional, merit-based culture, free from distracting social considerations. The directives came with a blunt warning. Hegseth demanded an end to what he called fat generals. All ranks must meet the tougher standards. Fail the test. Beyond internal culture, President Trump introduced a far more controversial idea, using the U.S. military for domestic law enforcement. He told top commanders they would be called upon to confront the enemy within. A phrase linked to dissidents and subversives was applied to crime and unrest in American cities. He explicitly linked the mission to Democratic-run cities, which he often criticizes. This rhetoric blurred the lines between foreign adversaries and American citizens, a distinction fundamental to a democracy. He proposed using dangerous cities as training grounds for the military. Active duty troops would operate in American communities for training exercises. It departs from training on designated bases and ranges. The plan raised legal alarms. The Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 and other federal law, plus Pentagon regulations, limit military use for domestic law enforcement. Exceptions exist for extreme insurrection, But routine training against an enemy within is a legally gray, politically explosive area. Such actions would face immediate court challenges and civil liberties concerns. For commanders, these orders posed the most unsettling questions about troops facing citizens they serve. As the remarks turned overtly political, the reaction was telling. Unlike his rallies, the room of nearly 800 military leaders remained largely silent. They sat stone-faced, a hallmark of military professionalism. Their silence upheld the nonpartisan tradition, not necessarily disapproval. Their allegiance is to the Constitution, not to any president or party. But it also signaled deep concern about legality, morale, and civil-military relations. Outside, reaction was swift. Senator Jack Reed condemned the gathering as an expensive, dangerous dereliction of leadership. He cited cost, disruption, and a focus on domestic political messaging. Reed warned Hegseth's ultimatum threatened the military's nonpartisan independence. Analyst Brian Clark said the event seemed more like public relations than aligning leadership on strategy. He noted a mismatch between the gravity of the summons and topics like grooming and fitness standards. Critics saw erosion of norms when military leaders are pressed to adopt political agendas. The backlash centered on protecting the principles governing the military's role in society. That ultimately was the core concern. The image of a president speaking to a silent room became a symbol of a widening rift between political appointees and uniformed leadership. The vision faces major legal and practical obstacles. Using active-duty troops in cities runs into the Posse Comitatus Act. Insurrection Act exceptions are narrow and contentious. Routine training against a vaguely defined enemy within would likely be blocked in court. Practically, soldiers in neighborhoods risk misinterpretations, escalation, and loss of public trust. The damage could be acute in communities with fraught law enforcement histories. One-size-fits-all standards risk pushing out vital specialists and weakening capability. Lifting anti-hazing rules reverses reforms, raising attrition, morale, and liability concerns. Congress can hold hearings, demand testimony, and attach conditions to the defense budget. Uniformed leadership can push back through formal feedback and readiness assessments. Public pressure, media scrutiny, and elected choices will shape outcomes. The all-volunteer force needs diverse talent, high standards, and trust to thrive. Will law, politics, or institutions check these directives, or cement a more uniform, aggressive culture? The balance between civilian control and military professionalism is delicate. The path forward is uncertain, and the answers will shape U.S. security for years to come.